How's it going, everyone? This is Chris. We are in week 1 of Skill of the Week, where we're getting a little better at one skill per week. The beauty of this course is that it's not really designed to be this high-pressure thing, but within each skill area, regardless of where you're at, you're probably going to pick up some things that are going to help you get a little better. You might think, I haven't thought of it quite that way. Or you may have taken lessons on one of these more specifically, and you are presented something in a slightly different light. That's kind of the goal of this. So this week, we are talking about strumming. Now, with each one of these lessons, with each one of these weeks, if you want to go more deeply into strumming, or into an alternate picking, or into songwriting, or whatever, there's lots of resources on the site that are going to help you do that. It's just a matter of deciding what you want to work on and what you want to focus on in more detail. But in this particular course, it's going to look like we're kind of jumping around everywhere, and that's totally fine. This is supposed to be sort of a primer. If you guys, if there's some of you who really want to get a lot better at strumming, I recommend Strum It Up, which is a live course that I taught last fall. And it gets into greater detail some of the things that we're going to be working on today. And you'll learn lots of different strum patterns. You'll learn a lot about how to groove, a lot about pocket. But we're going to be touching on some of that same stuff today in sort of a flyover, more abbreviated way of looking at things. So for those of you who have taken Strum It Up already and are watching this lesson, you're going to be exposed to some rhythms that weren't in Strum It Up. You're going to be reviewing this idea of getting your body in the groove. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the metronome up here at 100 beats per minute. And we are going to look at strumming time values, which is the tab which is included in the supplemental material of this lesson, and you'll also see it on the screen, I think. Yeah, no. Strumming time values. That one not up there? Okay, all right, we're getting there. So what we're going to be looking at here in a second is a very basic subdivision, measures and subdivisions. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but we're going to put the guitar down. I'm going to go ahead and set the metronome here, again at 100 beats per minute. And we're going to count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, we're going to go a little slower. We're going to go to 80 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Every time I count to 4, that's a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a blanket of time, and it duplicates over and over again. That's how every single song is set up. And when we have this amount of time, we can assign certain note subdivisions or certain subdivisions to this measure. So if I'm just doing this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I clap on the click, that's called a quarter note. If I divide that in half, we're going to call it an eighth note. If I divide the eighth note in half, we're going to call it a 16th note. Okay, so there are ways to subdivide within the subdivisions. 1 clap per click would be called a quarter note. 2 claps per click would be called an eighth note. 4 claps per click would be called a 16th note. Now, in Strum It Up, we spent a lot of time without the guitar getting into this idea that we're going to feel those subdivisions. And that's a very good thing to be able to do. We're going to review that quickly, and then we're just going to take it to the guitar. So if I do eighth notes, I want to be moving my body to the quarter note and clapping eighth notes. But you see what's going on. I am feeling that rhythm. I'm feeling that tempo. Now, if we're going to take this to guitar playing, we're going to turn this clap into a down-up motion. So I'm going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Down is on quarter notes, right? Right with my leg. And the up happens to be the and. 1 and 2. So it's a total of an eighth note value, see, when I'm strumming up and down. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. If I'm going to do a 16th note sort of pattern, then my down has to be eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. I like I have a guitar. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and... See? So my eighth notes, 1 and 2 and, is the downstrokes. And now, if you count the upstrokes, we've got 16th notes happening. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... Yeah? Now, who cares, right? This rhythmic motion where you're feeling the quarter note, you're feeling the groove in your body, and you're creating the 16th note feel is where strumming should originate. It should not originate with learning a strum pattern. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it really shouldn't. You want to be able to internalize the groove, particularly, at least for now, in 16th notes, and then things start to fall into place when you listen or try to learn certain patterns. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, there's our eighth notes again, or our quarter note at 80. And with the guitar in hand, I'm doing downstrokes at eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, which means my arm, if you look at it, is moving in 16th notes. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E, 1E and a 2. Do you see that? 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. So if I were to scrape the strings in 16th note pattern, it would sound like this. Now here's where it gets kind of cool. Regardless of whether I'm actually strumming every single 16th note subdivision or whether I'm just doing quarter notes, I'm going to keep the 16th note rhythm feel going in my arm and body. So watch. Now I'm going to strum eighth notes, but still keep that going. Now watch, hardly anything looks different about my hand if I go from eighth notes to 16th notes. Versus, it's the same. It looks the same. Now notice, I'm playing a pattern kind of off the cuff. But things keep moving the whole time. This right here, and I call this the human metronome concept, this is the essence of good strumming. Any strumming pattern that you learn, any groove you get into, should be set up like this. And like I said, if you want to get more deep into this, check out Strum It Up, the live course that I did last fall. But just knowing and practicing and applying this concept right here is going to make you so much better of a strummer. Do we have any questions or comments so far before we go and we take a look at a few examples?
We do not.
All right. So I've got some guitar profiles here. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be dissecting these strum patterns. And you're going to find, because this is just the way it goes, if you were to look at these strum patterns and you know, in Guitar Pro and just look at them, immediately you'd become robotic. Like, oh, these look so complicated. But they're really not. So what I've got here is I've got a guitar profile. Then we're going to listen to the guitar profile, and then we're going to internalize the groove. So you're not just going to learn the strum pattern, but you're going to see how this strumming, this motion, this strumming motion concept can be applied over these three grooves. So this first one, accents with string muting. Now, when you're looking at the tab, man, it looks complicated, right? It just, you know, and you might be tempted to sit there and go, okay, we've got this C, got this, and it's going. Oh no, I see that there's downstrokes in there, so down and up strokes. You might be tempted to do something like that, and even when you were to speed that up, that's the strum pattern. That is the strum pattern. If I were to play along with it, but it doesn't groove. That's the strum pattern, but it does not groove. Contrast that with this, okay? There's a reason I started with 80 beats per minute earlier. We've got an 80 beat per minute metronome. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get my hand going, because there are 16th notes in this strum pattern. You can see it on the page. So I'm gonna get my arm going with 16th notes. There's the groove. And it doesn't have to be exact. It has to be the essence of the groove. That's more important. Versus this. Or do you hear the difference? I need some yes or no's. I need some sign that I'm I'm teaching to people. Do you hear the difference between those two? To me, I mean, it feels and sounds incredibly different. The main thing that you're going to notice with this sort of approach is that every groove is going to come much easier to you than simply looking at tab and trying to decipher it. Any feedback so far?
Yeah, we have quite a few people over on our YouTube live stream that are tracking with you, saying yes, they hear the difference.
You
for
do
sure.
hear yeah, it's a huge difference. So if we put the chords over it. Versus it allows you to be a little bit more incidental with it too. Like you have the essence of the groove, and then you can capitalize on the fact that this is moving and do some cool stuff with it. That. Okay, let's move on to our second strum pattern. This is a 90s alternative sort of groove. Our tempo marking is at 90 beats per minute. Here it is. Moving on to the second page here. Now, this type of groove I have heard be so robotic. It's really hard to get this right if you don't understand this concept. I mean, if we're just doing it on string scrapes, people can get, the downstroke, upstroke thing confused so easily. And it's just one of those things that if you don't have this going, it's gonna sound really bad. It's gonna sound worse than the guitar profile. If you're doing a one-for-one sort of thing, and I've even seen people seen this happen where they even get the down and the upstrokes confused and it ends up feeling like this. then you're doing an up when you're supposed to be doing a down. So let's apply the same sort of freedom to this. Let's go 90 beats per minute. 16th note feel. Let's ease into the feel of the groove. Again, to the difference. Verse. You might miss something here and there, but at least that doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're really propelling the beat forward. Let's add the chords. Simplify it a little bit at that same tempo, but let's keep the groove going. So sound more like Oasis. So it's the same, I was just adding less 16th notes, even though I was keeping the 16th notes going. Let's slow it down and see how it feels. We'll slow it down to like 70. Now this is a good drill because we're going to take the same strum pattern and we're going to have to reinvent the feel within our own strumming arm. Any questions? Or comments? Is this a new way of looking at strumming for some of you? How many of you have taken Strum It Up?
I do have a question I want to pass on here.
Sure.
This question is from Nanny's Chicken.
Okay.
The question is, are you following the strum pattern exactly or improvising a bit?
That is the key here. We want to capture the essence of the strum pattern. We want to capture that. That's the groove, right? We want to get that groove, and then we want to play it, and then we don't want to be that concerned about whether it's exact. But it's not like I'm improvising all over the place. I'm sticking to the groove that is implied by the strum pattern. That's the way real strumming is done. Playing a strum pattern exact never happens by anybody who is good at strumming. There's always that sense of improvising. It's not really improvising as much as it is, what's a better word for that, Smith? Expression, adding expression to it, playing off the cuff a little bit within the context of the groove. Good question, and thank you for asking it, because that's a huge clarifier. Don't play it exactly. Get in the groove, get in the essence of the groove, and then apply that metronome concept, your human metronome concept, to get the groove, but be free with it.
Okay, we've got Injar who took Strum It Up last year, so we do have a few people on
Cool.
that did go through that course. I have another question here from Lucas. So you recommend practicing the rhythm beforehand, kind of as a study before applying it to a song to first nail the groove before adding any specific chords to it?
Yeah. You know, this thing that I've been doing where you get it in your strumming hand first, and you just do the string scraping thing. That is so valuable because it helps you internalize the groove first. Now, when you're learning something like this from the tab, there is going to be an element of this, like, okay, see, down, 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 down. Looking at the subdivisions too. Down, 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 up, down, 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 up. All right, let me do it again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and okay, that's not musical at all. Let me try again. Down, 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 da, 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 da. Okay, that sounds like, and say it. Da, 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 da. That right there, being able to vocalize a rhythm before you play it or while you're sort of figuring it out, is so helpful. So helpful, because immediately you're internalizing it. So even better, counting it's one thing, but being able to just kind of like da 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 da. Now it's music, right? And turn your guitar over and make a drum beat out of it, Let's see. So, it's there. Now, you're going for imitation. You see the process there? Granted, it was a bit contrived because I was sort of showing you where you might have to start versus where you can go when you take this approach of not just immediately trying to strum it, but feel it, speak it, groove with it, move with it, then strum it, then add the chords. Other question?
This one's from TK West 2000, and the question is, I've never paid attention to whether it's up or down in the strokes. Does it matter?
It matters only in the context that you are keeping a consistent 16th note strum, and whatever happens to be up is up, and whatever happens to be down is down. If you're looking at a strum pattern, it's going to give you suggestions, but again, it's more important that you're keeping this up. Typically, your strong beats are down and your weaker beats are up. But there are exceptions to that. I mean, you've got stuff like this, like a strum pattern like this, what might be a... Notice, I'm still going 16th note the whole time, but notice there's that upstroke that's loud. So that's an example of that. Good question.
Okay, next one is related to that. Are all the strong beats on a downstroke?
With the exception of, and this maybe was asked before I just played my example, there are exceptions, but most of the time the downstroke is the strong beat. But that one that I just played has a very strong upstroke. Again, the focus is that you want that 16th note constant. And then if you feel like accent, you can kind of accent however you want as long as you're in the groove.
And this one's from Diane. But if it's a group of people, can a person still be incidental? Or if it's meant to be in unison, then it has to be more exact?
I think that there's actually, there's a lot of freedom in being incidental. That's a good word. If you're all playing the same groove, you can totally be incidental. And it sounds really cool to have these tiny little variances. In fact, if you listen to a lot of recordings, and you hear like a guitar on this side and a guitar on this side, and there are those little incidental sort of things that are happening, but it's the same groove. And it's, if you guys are both doing this, essentially this. But one of you does this sometimes. It's going to sound really good because you're both playing the same groove. You're just sometimes this person's adding a little bit more 16th notes, sometimes this person's adding a little bit more strums, but it's the same groove in the same time. And I think that can sound really amazing.
Okay, and the next question is, so do you recommend never looking at the up and down notation, rather just listen and get the groove?
Yeah, I think that sometimes the down up notation can work against that. As long as you can make the translation to the down, to me, when looking at strum patterns, it's always reasonable. Once you hear the strum pattern, once you see it, once you figure out the rhythm and put it in your, mouth and body and hands and stuff, it's always sort of inevitable what happens with the down up thing, because you're getting in that constant groove, and then it just sort of happens. So yeah, I think that in general I would ignore that down up markings and just do it. And by just doing it, I mean the process that we've been talking about here. Good question.
Okay, and this one was from, let's get this name right, Prithvi Pranith. A word on picking strings while strumming?
Good question. Yeah, so you're doing like a something like that. Notice my arm is still moving and like da 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 da. It doesn't stop. I'm not doing this. I can't even know if I can do it anymore. I can't even really do it, but it's that idea where you're like strumming and then you're picking and you're strumming. Let it go. And a lot of that's gonna have to do with muting and knowing how to target your string. So you have to, that takes a lot of practice. Or, you know, you might have something like a... where you're targeting groups of strings, like higher and then lower. But it's the same idea. You might be doing a little bit more like wrist targeting, but this stays. I'll play that first example again. That stays the whole time. Thanks for bringing that up, though.
Okay, we got a couple more here. I just need to get them on the screen, so just 1 second here.
Mm-hmm.
This is also from Lucas. Your strumming sounds so clean without any unnecessary tones ringing through.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe you could comment on how you're doing that.
I think a big part of it is, well, there's two facets to that. Number one is what we've been talking about. This idea that it's just constant, that it's groovy, using this metronome arm concept. The other is muting with this hand. So if I'm doing, we'll go back to that other one. Yeah. When I'm playing here, I'm freeing this arm to really get at it because this hand right here is muting that string. So if I happen to hit it, you're not going to hear it. That, and I'm actually targeting certain strings with this hand, even though I'm keeping the motion going, as you saw with this example. So I'm muting and I'm targeting, even while keeping this going. And that, you know, we deal with that a lot in Strum It Up. If you haven't watched that, you can take a full 10 weeks on just strumming. And we get more into that. Targeting notes, muting with both hands, palm muting, stuff like that.
Okay, and the next one is from Fog Dweller. Isn't it like when mixing or tracking, you'll offset tracks a couple of milliseconds for depth, not just copy and paste?
Yeah, that's sort of the fake way of providing a little bit of variance between, you know, you could play it twice and pan it, or you could play it once and then copy and paste and then slide it forward 20 milliseconds or something. Usually a pretty good, you know, I think for clean acoustic guitar, like 7 or 8 milliseconds can work. For like more loose guitar, distorted electric, you might try like 22, 23 milliseconds. And that works, but I think in general, it's cooler just to play it again. Because then you do get that actual variance, for sure.
Okay, I think that catches us up for the moment here.
Cool, good questions, guys. Okay, we've got one last strum pattern. Driving in 6/8. This is a different groove altogether. Let's listen to it. That sounds super robotic right there. Okay, so we got to listen to that again, and we got to decipher what the groove is, because that's totally not groovy. 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 65. Let's get the metronome. Okay, so well, we want to be. Okay, we want to be up here like 150. Up. A little faster. 165. Down, 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 down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Down, 2, 3, 4. Down, 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 down. How many people like to drum on your steering wheel? That's a great exercise for this. Down, 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 down. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's essentially what it is. So that's just one more example of taking something that you see, then taking something that you hear, internalizing it, speaking it, pounding it out, and finally strumming it. There's the process you want to go through. And this really is, we've taken maybe not a full 10 weeks of material and shoved it into an hour, but the concept that we're working on here is really dissected much more. Again, I'll say another plug for Strum It Up if you're a JamPlay member. You can spend a whole 10 weeks looking at different types of rhythms, different types of strum patterns, the single note thing, palm muting with this hand, muting with this hand, all sorts of stuff. So definitely, if this is interesting to you and you want to take it further, check out Strum It Up for sure. Any other questions or comments?
We do have a couple questions.
Great.
This one is again from Lucas.
Yep.
I've heard that adding palm muting to your strumming means finding the sweet spot on your guitar. Does it matter if you end up playing behind the sound hole? Does this influence the sound in any negative way?
Oh, I think it can be great sounding. You know, you still want to keep that rhythm going, right? So there's that kind of palm muting where it's kind of like this, you know, like a. you're palm muting a little, you're kind of striking and palm muting. We actually go over that and strum it up too, this sort of pick slap technique. There's also this kind of thing. Where you're slapping the strings. It's not a mute, it's a mute, but it's not a palm mute. It's more like a... Notice my arm still doesn't stop. I'm doing that in there. And that's done further up, like here, whereas the palm muting is back right on the bridge. And when you're palm muting, you're rarely playing all the strings.
All right, and one more question here from Tallman45. How do you stop bad strumming habits?
Do this. Break it down, get the metronome arm thing going. That's how you're gonna break your bad habit. I mean, if you can get that down, that 16th note strumming thing, if you can get that down and then retroactively apply some of the strum patterns you think you know to this, I mean, so many bad strumming habits are gonna go out the window. Because the root of bad strumming habits is that you're not feeling the rhythm. If you feel the rhythm first, you can't help but sort of groove with it. But most bad strumming habits result from trying to play something like I'd been demonstrating, you know, this idea where you're, okay, down, 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 up, down, up, down, down. Down, 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 up, down, down, you know. And then there's a lot of other things in there. Again, we don't have time to go into all of it right now, but, you know, how's your muting techniques on both hands? How are, you know, is your guitar in tune? Is it intonated well? Is the action set up right? So that, you know, there's all sorts of things like that. But the main thing that's gonna help you work those habits out is this human metronome concept. Number one thing, by far.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we've got at the moment. Yes, we're caught up for the moment.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Next week, we are talking about getting a little better at alternate picking. That one's gonna be huge. It is... Wow, strumming and alternate picking. I mean, those are the two right-hand techniques that are, you know, this hand techniques that are, you know, we're going to get into it next week. It's going to be a really cool one. Same as this week. There are a lot of other resources out there for it, but we're going to learn some tricks that are going to help you get rid of bad habits, that are going to help set you on the right course to consistently improving in your alternate picking. That's next week. After that, we get into getting a little better at learning songs, so ear training essentially. And then week 4 and week 5 and week 6, we go back to technique, bending, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and sliding. So looking forward to having you around for all these different skills techniques. Another question?
Yeah, and get one more in here. I think this is a good one. This is from Tracy, and also Farhan asks pretty much the same question.
Okay.
And how about pick weight and thickness? If playing with heavier picks, do you need to adjust your grip on the pick?
I prefer, when I'm really going at it with just strumming, and I'm a little different than some people, but I prefer to use a light gauge pick. Now, I don't use these on electric at all. I use very hard picks on electric, but with acoustic, this is a 0.5 millimeter. And I like the fact that it bends, and it helps me to be able to just, you know, strum. If I'm doing stuff with more single pick notes, I might go up to like a 0.75 millimeter or something like that. But these are my favorite just to really dig in and strum with, and I think that's a good place to start. If you do use a heavier pick, it just means you have to hold it more loosely and let the fact that you're holding it. But I you know, when I use heavier picks when I'm strumming like that, I always drop them. This one I can grip it, and I'm not like really gripping it, but I'm able to hold on to it. Good, very good question. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week for the next skill of the week. which is alternate picking. You've been watching Strumming. See you soon.